Just under 3 years ago, I released the first video in my demo diving series. Since then, I've taken 2 breaks from YouTube, but have eventually grown to cover more than 50 upcoming indie games before their release to let others know about these mostly smaller titles. And even though I missed out on some games that I knew were going to be a hit, like Cult of the Lamb, I can say that I look back with some nostalgic feelings of where I started and where I've grown to. For anyone interested in my older stuff, I do have a playlist dedicated to all the videos, but just be aware that this is a learning process and my older videos are definitely rough to say the least. With this being the 50th episode of Demo Diving, my Discord members agreed that a reflection on how my predictions have panned out would be a neat thing to see, and now that I created an Excel spreadsheet that would make Charlie Day jealous, let's jump on in and look back at some of what has been covered. I think a good place to begin would be to take a look at some highlights from my reviews and some of the games covered that really stood out. I've only been rating games since episode 19, but there are some that I covered before that really deserve some more attention, including Dredge, where I kind of made a mistake and gave the seal of approval to Ship of Fools instead of Dredge, but even though Ship of Fools is good, Dredge really picked up when it released. As for games I did rate, there was only 1 10, 1 9.5, and 4 9s given. I'll get back to the 10 a little later in this video, but I generally stand behind these ratings, and while Last Train Home is the only one that hasn't cracked an average score of 9 or higher, I still really enjoyed the demo and think that fans of RTS games would really like this game. In the end, I gave out an average rating of 7.69, nice. And of all 41 games that I've covered that have actually released, I've purchased 12 of them, including a couple I didn't quite favor in my reviews. There are a few more on this list that I know I want to pick up, but the backlog of games to play list is ever growing, and it may be a while before I can get my hands on some of these gems. Unfortunately, not every game I've played has been stellar. I think it's important to showcase some of these less than ideal games to explain what could have been done differently, but it does make me very happy to know that every complaint I had about Forspoken was dead on with the full release. That video will always have a special place in my heart, as it was the first video I ever made that got me a dislike, making me feel like I actually started to make it as a YouTuber. I think where things get a little spicy is where I missed my prediction. Most recently, Cataclysmo received a 6.5 from me, and I was apparently dead wrong on that, with it being the biggest discrepancy I've ever recorded. I think I may have been a little harsh on its rating, but I still stand with some of my complaints I had with the game, but that should never prevent anyone from enjoying the game if they want to. My goal with this series isn't to make you take my word for it, as demos are free and only cost the time that you put into them, but I think it's a good way to showcase some upcoming games that may not get so much coverage. Some other games that had significant variance between my ratings and what they got when they released were Turbo Kid, Ultros, and oddly enough, Dustborn. I think if I could, I would change my rating on Turbo Kid to an 8, as there really wasn't enough that hampered it down aside from my prejudice against the terrible acting in a movie it's based on. Dustborn, though, was an interesting video. I agonized about how low I wanted to rate the game, eventually settling on a 4. However, it's in an odd spot where it's getting generally favorable reviews on Steam and Metacritic, all while being review bombed by users. It does make me somewhat interested in giving the full game a shot as an attempt to see if the disjointedness I felt in the demo is fixed, so if this is something you'd be interested in, leave a comment below and I'll try to work it into my schedule. One oddity I noticed is just how many of the games I've covered that haven't even been released, with one of those even dating back to episode 6. Some are on the horizon, but in the future I plan on trying to cover games closer to the release so I don't cover a game like Nine Souls about a year before it comes out. But speaking of all these games I've covered, only one of them really earned that 10, and it finally had a release date set, which I only noticed while doing my research for this video. Crypt Custodian really hit home with a lot of its elements, blending emotional and comical writing with Metroidvania and Zelda-style gameplay, alongside having the goodest of boys being the main protagonist. I realized the almost poetic timing of this being my 50th episode of the series, and while I wasn't exactly going to cover a game, I am really happy to tell anyone who's interested in this game that it will be releasing tomorrow. And that is another one that you can bet I will be picking up. That will wrap up this 50th episode of Demo Diving. I will be returning to normal programming, so I apologize if this wasn't your thing. I had a request for this style of video on my Discord, so if you want to have a say in the type of things that I post up here, leave a comment or join the Discord. And while you're at it, join the weekly Discord game so you don't miss out on moments like this.
Cool, great, awesome.
But that'll be it for this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and as always, be kind to one another. Shoutouts go to Relativity, Naughty Dog is King, Chaos, and Kamikalo alongside all those wonderful subscribers out there. Make sure to check out my shorts videos if you want more brief content, but either way, I will see you soon.